The Northwest Premier Job Mokgoro finally got the push yesterday after what has been characterised as intense power battles with the Interim Provincial Committee in the province. Bushy Maape has been named premier-designate pending a vote in the legislature. Joining us now to discuss the politics behind Makoro's removal is political analyst Professor Andre Duvenhage of the Northwest University. Professor Duvenhage, good to have you with us on the daytime update today. When we look at the history of Job Mokgoro within the Northwest province and specifically his position of leadership, he came in 2018 and his task was to stabilize the province. There were a lot of dynamics there at the time. It looks like relations have soured. Talk us through the elements as well as the events that have led to the degeneration of relationship between Premier Job Mokgoro and provincial leadership.
Good afternoon, Tommy. Yes, your summary is indeed correct, but to understand it, we need to have some background. And what is important to understand is that only two premiers since 1994 completed their respective terms, and that was Popo Molefe and Edna Molewa. The others all lost their position before completing their term. So there's a lot of instability on that level. Secondly, we need to understand that the province is under administration in terms of Article 100 of the Constitution, putting it under the guidance of an administrator. So the Premier cannot take executive decisions, especially financial decisions. He needs to get clarification from the administrator. Thirdly, there was no election in the ANC to elect a PEC. Now they have an Interim Provincial Committee consisting of conflicting groups. So it's going to be close to impossible to satisfy all the different ideologies, all the different viewpoints, the vested interest. Fourthly, the important thing is the majority of municipalities are currently under administration under Article 139 of the Constitution. 5 of them must be completely disbanded and do elections for council. Now, if you take that environment, you must clearly say that it is a difficult environment for a premier to operate. And I have a lot of sympathy with Premier Professor Job Mokgoro for that environment. And I think what we are seeing is also the deep history and deep-rooted conflict within the ANC on literally all levels. It's not a provincial problem alone, it's also a local problem. And it's now also connecting to a national level. And there were rumors going around that Premier Job Mokgoro will be connected to Mr. Supramawamupelo. Now, I had a conversation with Mr. Mokgoro, Professor Mokgoro, a time ago, and he denied that very strongly. He told me his job was to clean up the province, rid of forms of state capture, the looting, etc. So that is in a nutshell the background and the situation.
Some have argued in support of Premier Job Mokgoro that, as you said, that his hands were very much tied because of Section 100 of the Constitution, because he really could not do much in order to change the lack of service delivery in the province. So if performance then is not really the card upon which he is being released, there's also the other angle of him being in front of the disciplinary committee of the IPC. Talk to us about that.
Yes, there's a number of reasons presented in the media for the removal of Premier Mokgoro. The first one is not following ANC instructions. And again, I must mention, there's no elected PEC for the ANC. The most important reason is probably his intense conflict with the IPC. And we know within the IPC, which is a very complicated committee with diverse interests is about impossible to satisfy. Then thirdly, the argument was put forward that there was no progress in terms of service delivery, in terms of changes on local government level, and he is not connecting with the people at the grassroots level. And then there was also a complaint saying that he has a rogue unit in his office. So that is the general reasons. My own take on it is that he is in direct conflict with vested interests within the IPC, and to bring about change to the province is basically to put that interest in a very, very difficult situation. And therefore, there's a conflict between the IPC and Premier Job Mokgoro, and the end result was his removal. But again, we must take into consideration that the ANC is not a consolidated unit, even on a national level. I know this decision is coming from the NEC, but already I can see the divisions developing within the province. And that is not what Cyril Ramaphosa wants. And it's interesting that people are asking him directly to come and explain what is going on. And we must remember that Bushy Maape is seen as a very close confidant of Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Do you think that voting with the DA in legislature against Lina Miga, who eventually lost to Priscilla Williams, was that the nail in the coffin for Job Mokgoro? Because this was a directive that was issued by the ANC, and Job Mokgoro, along with the 4 other members, went directly against this.
Yes, indeed. I think that is definitely the tipping point in terms of decision-making with regard to Premier Job Mokgoro. It is quite clear to me that him aligning with the Democratic Alliance is resulting in that decision. But now we must also take into consideration another perspective, and that is that Premier Mokgoro is also supported by opposition groups within the particular legislature. And I am not so sure that all ANC members is going to support Bushy Maape, especially as Premier from the legislature. So this is going to be a tough decision, a tough process ahead of the ANC, because we are looking at a very, very divided organization, and an organization divided or house divided within itself can't stand, and that is what we are looking at the moment.
We did see, Professor, yesterday some supporters of Premier Job Mokgoro outside the ANC house there in the northwest, supporting the former Premier and saying that, or rather the Premier, saying that if they have anything to do with it, he will be going nowhere. What does this do for the dynamics within the northwest?
Well, without any doubt, it is emphasizing the big divide within the ANC in the province. And it's also interesting, and I had a conversation yesterday with one of the leaders of the opposition in the legislature, coming from the EFF, clearly talking about a coup coming from the side of Ramaphosa. And then we know that the RET group is very under the name Supra Mohamupelo. And this is giving us an image of a province that is deeply divided. And if you analyze the situation in the province, it all starts with what is going on in the ANC. And if the ANC cannot consolidate themselves, there will always be trouble and instability within the province. And this will affect the service delivery to ordinary citizens. And I am not that sure that Mr. Bushy Maape is going to consolidate the province. I think the strong men of Northwest politics, referring to Supra and maybe also in a way to a person like Nonu Moloi, is not going to give their support all the way.
Bushy Maape has already been ousted as the premier-designate, yet no reception of Job Mokgoro's resignation has been seen. Is this a forced resignation? And if it is, what could be the repercussions of that?
This is, according to my assessment, a forced resignation. I already received notice very early on Sunday morning that Mr. Job Mokgoro is fired as Premier of the province and that he will be replaced by Bushy Maape. I also know the other names involved at that time. But the fact that the decision was not officially made, the fact that there is no letter of resignation is to me an indication that there's a push against this decision. And again, I'm back at the national level of the ANC, where we know there are huge divisions. We know what happened in KZN recently, and many people are saying that that was a revolt from a certain group within the ANC against the leadership of the ANC. I do not think it is such a wise decision to get rid of Mr. Premier Job Mokgoro at the moment. My take on it is the timing is not good, and I think it's going to ignite patterns of instability in Northwest. And at the moment, we need leadership. We need to rebuild the province and the structures of state in terms of the interest of all the people, and I cannot see that as highly likely within the current scenario.
Professor Duvenhage, thank you very much for your analysis there.